Hey guys, tonight we set sail on a winding, wave-lulled journey along the ancient spice routes, a voyage where salt and star charts mean more than sleep, and where a single pinch of cinnamon is worth more than your shoes. Picture it. The vast night sky spills overhead, your creaky wooden ship groaning beneath your tired feet, and every gust of wind smells faintly of cardamom and brine. There's a good chance you'll scuff your hands hauling anchor or accidentally trade your only boots for a handful of cloves. You probably won't survive this, at least not with all your toes, or your dignity. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time you've decided to drift off to old world oceans. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll up an ancient, sun-faded map on a rocking galley, tracing twisting black lines across a world that hardly seems possible, a patchwork of sea, sand, and lands whose names you can barely pronounce. Your fingers follow the spirals drawn by merchants centuries ago, winding from the humid mangrove ports of the Malabar coast through the bustling Red Sea and past Alexandria's lighthouse, ever westward toward markets drenched in European drizzle. The spice routes aren't just pretty names. They're arteries running through civilizations, each bend in the path a place where fortunes are made and cozy little disasters unfold. You squint at the carefully inked coastlines. Think of the Silk Road as a sister, all about silks and horses. Here it's nutmeg that rules, with peppercorns playing sidekick, ginger riding shotgun, and camphor sneaking along in dusty barrels. Your stomach growls, but don't get too excited. Food on these ships is notoriously bland, a sure way to appreciate spices all the more. Mainstream historians agree. As early as 2,000 years ago, Indian, Arab, and Chinese traders knew these passages by heart and by tides. Some say the true beginning of the spice trade dates even further back, with the pharaohs demanding frankincense for their afterlife spa treatments, although the evidence, a battered Egyptian jar, the odd cargo manifest, remains tantalizingly unclear. And there's always that scholarly debate about just how organized these routes really were. Did cargo travel the full length from one empire to another? Or did sleepy little merchants just keep passing sacks of nutmeg like a salty relay race, nobody bothering to track the final destination? Tonight, every port along this inky line flickers into view. Kilwa, all coral ruins and saffron-scented fish stalls. The monsoon-drenched harbors of Southeast Asia, where cinnamon trees cling to hillsides like sleepy cats. Even Zanzibar, whose every breeze seems to carry whispers of 1,000 deals struck when the moon's right. There's a dreamy logic to it all, as if the routes themselves are breathing slowly, inhaling cool night winds and letting the spices' aromas mingle and drift from one sleepy village to the next. And as you sit there on deck, feeling the ship's soft creak and the night's damp chill settle in, you realize these were no ordinary voyages. They were slow dances with nature and fortune, played out at the pace of the ocean's own heartbeat. You might not last a day on this path, but here you are, a quiet witness to a world that turned on cinnamon sticks and star charts. Splinters and salt caked under your fingernails, you set your jaw against the next long stretch. Those grimy dangers that early sailors faced on spice voyages weren't just a footnote. The wooden boards beneath your feet aren't sanded smooth, and each one seems determined to announce its own unique creak anytime you try to sneak an extra ration from the hold. The air is thick with the smell of tar and sweat, and the restless slap of briny water against the hull makes even seasoned sailors a little twitchy. You might imagine there's romance in the night sea, but between the sleep deprivation and lice, you're living proof that a traveler's reality is usually somewhere between exotic and itchy. Let's be honest, the crews on these ancient spice ships were one injury away from a disaster. Open wounds fester quickly in the damp ocean air. There's no neosporin here, just the hope that salt water might kill whatever's creeping up your finger. You munch hardtack for dinner, its surface so tough you could chip a tooth, then hope you don't get scurvy like the unlucky guy curled up near the anchor chain. Still, you soldier on, listening to the old hands swapping grim tales. One sailor claims there's a fish in these waters that can bite straight through rope. Another swears by wearing dried gourd hats to keep the sunstroke at bay. Most fearsome, though, are the spice fever runs. Cargo turns moldy in humid holds, and greedy merchants sometimes slip in dangerous extras just to bulk up a shipment. You caught a glimpse once of a sailor's amulet lashed around his neck. Supposedly it keeps him safe from sea monsters, but not from bad luck. It broke during the last monsoon squall. Big historical fact: these weren't luxury cruises. Most ancient vessels lacked real cabins, let alone decent bedding or a place to air out your socks. Hammocks come centuries later, so picture yourself jostling for space on scratchy mats, your neighbor's elbow firmly in your ribs. Pirates prowl the horizon. Some scholars still argue whether the greatest risk to spice traders was actually piracy or, more quietly, disease outbreaks. Fevers loved tightly packed quarters almost as much as rats loved the food stores. Here's something quirky. In Indian Ocean crossings, it wasn't unheard of for ships to bring along goats or even chickens, not just for food, but as living good luck charms. Sailors sometimes painted eyes on the ship's prow, staring right back at the fates, daring them to blink first. One unlucky superstition: never whistle on deck. It tempts the wind, and a sudden gale could easily blow a clumsy deckhand overboard. Some nights, you lie awake in the bow's shadow, salty lashes stuck together, and wonder how many bodies the ocean claims each year. How many sleepy seafarers never open their eyes again. The route is littered with ghost stories, sure, but the real chill crawls up from your toes every time the hull groans or someone coughs behind you. You try to drift off, humming a tune the old cook swears keeps sea demons at bay. Historians still argue whether these songs were spells, or just the only way to make hardtack go down. As dawn teases the ragged edges of the sky, you can't decide if you envy the landlocked souls who sleep through the night or feel lucky. Because at least for now, the ship, and you, are still afloat. The first real taste of peace on these spice-laden ships comes when night finally settles and the wind dies down, a rare pause in the day's chaos. You nestle against a coil of rope, shoulder to shoulder with snoring crewmates. The deck's cool boards press against your back, and the stars above glimmer like spilled salt on navy blue velvet. Right now, the cargo doesn't matter, nor does the gold stashed in the captain's battered chest. What matters is this small, calm ritual: how weary bodies collapse, voices drop to whispers, and the creaks of the ship settle into a sleepy lullaby. You learn quickly. Nighttime is when secrets are passed along. A young sailor quietly warns you: never sleep with your boots off. Rats love the taste of toes. Somebody else muffles a laugh, sharing rumors about phantom ships. Vessels crewed only by skeletons drifting between real ships, forever searching for their lost peppercorns. You can't help but grin, even as your eyes grow heavy, lulled by the rhythmic slap of water and the soft hum of lullabies in dialects you barely understand. One old deckhand quietly strums a battered lyre, plucking a tune that's older than any map inked on parchment. Here's a mainstream fact for your mind to turn over. Sailors aboard spice ships were rarely paid well. In fact, most took this gig not for adventure, but because they had no other options, imprisonment or starvation being the main alternatives. If luck held, maybe you'd work your way up to a slightly less terrible job, perhaps even a bunk away from the leakier side of the hold. A quirky tidbit slides in as the night deepens. Some ships made sleep shifts into miniature festivals. On Persian or Indian vessels, the crew might light a sandalwood incense stick at dusk, hoping the sweet smoke kept away foul dreams, and incidentally, the ship's more pungent passengers. If you were extra fortunate, you might score a cup of warm spiced milk from a cook sneaking leftovers, said to guarantee a dreamless night, though most just claimed it cured homesickness for an hour or two. As you drift, one eye always half open for the captain's shadow, you remember that historians still argue whether these nocturnal customs actually bonded the crew or just added a veneer of comfort to a truly precarious life. Some posit that the rituals were a form of silent resistance, a way for sailors to reassert control when fate and the fickle sea were far beyond their reach. Just before sleep claims you, another detail emerges from the dark. There's a rhythm to this floating community, a code of mutual dependency beneath all the gentle teasing. Out here, you realize, even a gentle joke or a quietly shared myth can be a lifesaver. Something to keep your mind afloat long after the stars have faded and the sun's harsh heat returns. The salty air carries a sharp aroma that isn't just sea spray. It's the exotic scent of the spices you're hauling, tucked away in barrels and sacks all around you. Tonight, your tired mind drifts lazily through tales of these fragrant treasures: cinnamon, cardamom, cloves, and nutmeg. Each spice has its own little story, adding flavor not only to food but also to rituals and remedies among the people who swear by their sleepy time magic. Take cinnamon, for instance. Beyond spicing up desserts, ancient traders believed it helped ease everything from stomach aches to restless nights. You might smile at that. Today, it's in your latte, but back then, it was a luxury so precious that only the wealthy could afford it, wrapped carefully in golden cloth. A little-known fact. Merchants sometimes roasted cinnamon sticks gently before sale to bring out a sweeter smell, a trick thought to charm even the grumpiest buyer into parting with more silver coins. Peppercorns were peppery ambassadors of the spice world, valued almost like currency. You shuffle through memories of how some medieval cooks brewed pepper-infused teas to soothe colds and even aid sleep. Oddly enough, historians still argue whether the pungent spice actually had any calming effects, or if it was just the placebo power of a warm drink after a long day. Either way, traders filled entire cargo holds with these tiny orbs, dreaming of the markets where the stuff could shine like black gold. Cloves float in your mind next, the little flower buds whose scent transports you to far-off islands. They were prized not just for cooking, but for their believed ability to fight off germs. You learn that sailors would grind cloves and mix them into simple pastes to mask the harsh taste of stale bread, a comfort when the ship's galley ran dangerously low on fresh supplies. And then there's cardamom, the queen of spices, as it was often called, whose sweet warmth seemed to make long nights aboard ship a bit more bearable. Sometimes, the spice was combined with honey to calm coughing sailors or, in one peculiar custom, steeped in water and splashed onto the face to banish the fatigue of endless salt air. You stretch out, the deck's planks cold against your skin, as your thoughts settle on these scents that traveled thousands of miles to reach you. Every spice you touch tonight isn't just seasoning. It's a story steeped in trade, tradition, and a pinch of magic. Some historians believe the aromatics were also a subtle way to mask the awful ship smells. Others think these spices held spiritual significance, warding off bad luck on perilous journeys. And who could blame them? When you've spent weeks surrounded by the smell of sweat, salt, and fish guts, a little cinnamon goes a long way toward sweet dreams. The monsoon winds are the unsung lullabies of your voyage, a rhythm that tucks the sea and sky into a slow, swaying dance. As you lean against the weathered rail, you feel the gentle push and pull of the breezes shifting with the seasons. The monsoons don't just fill the sails, they shape the very heartbeat of the spice routes. Traders timed their departures and arrivals according to these winds, trusting that nature's schedule would keep their fragile ships from wandering off into oblivion. Imagine the anxiety mixed with relief as the first monsoon gust breathes life into the sails after months of waiting. For some sailors, the wind is a tender friend. For others, it's an unpredictable beast that could turn calm seas into a watery grave. You probably don't want to be on deck when the winds howl like a pack of wolves. Or maybe you do, because boredom was the real killer on these long trips. The monsoon season also brings nocturnal moods. Nights thick with mist and the scent of rain offer moments of quiet reflection, when the world narrows to the sound of sails snapping and the water lapping against the hull. You might hear whispered stories from the crew about the monsoon spirits said to ride the winds, blessing some ships with safe passage and sending others to watery doom. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were simply comfort or secret codes to explain sudden storms. Here's a curious fact. The timing of the monsoons was so crucial that entire coastal communities developed calendars and festivals based solely around the arrival and departure of these winds. Sailors memorized these signs, everything from the flight of birds to the bloom of certain flowers, to predict when to cast off. Some even believed the monsoon was a living force, capable of listening and responding to human pleas made by night fires. Meanwhile, the great ships themselves seemed to lean into the wind's rhythm, rolling gently as if cradled in a cosmic rocking chair. You feel the slow sway beneath your feet and the cool mist on your cheeks, a calming balm after days of relentless sun and salt spray. It's no surprise that some mariners swore that sleeping during a monsoon breeze was the most restful sleep there was, though finding a dry spot was always a challenge. So, as you close your eyes against the sea's chorus, remember that these winds were more than weather. They were the pulse of the spice trade, pushing along the stories, scents, and sleepy dreams carried between continents. Tonight, beneath the soft swoosh of canvas and the rhythmic creak of the ship's bones, you cradle a pinch of pepper in your palm. Hard to believe this little spice has sparked more than a few heated arguments and cross-ocean adventures. Salt and pepper, those now ordinary table staples, once held the power to build empires, topple fortunes, and yes, even inspire the kind of drowsy negotiations that put half a harbor to sleep. As dawn glimmers on the horizon, the cook stirs in the galley, scattering black peppercorns over whatever starchy miracle he scraped together. You catch a whiff, sharp and heady, enough to make your nose twitch. Today, most folks hardly remember that pepper was once called black gold, transported across deserts and oceans as patiently as possible. Sailors swapped tales of pepper pirates preying on slow merchants and of kings who boasted pepper stashes in their treasure vaults instead of gold. And did you know? Some ancient contracts recorded pepper as a rent payment. Imagine handing your landlord a sack of pepper instead of a check. Quirky but real. Salt, though, that's a whole story on its own, no mere sidekick. Used not just for flavor, but crucially for preserving food, salt kept sailors fed when winds stalled. Salt, cod, and pickled veggies aren't winning any culinary awards, but they're the secret behind not starving on month-long voyages. And sometimes, salt itself was practically currency. On certain routes, salt was so valuable that men measured their wages quite literally worth their salt. A phrase still in our language, salty as ever. Yet, scholars still fill journals arguing whether these spice and salt shipments ever traveled directly from India or Indonesia all the way to Europe, or if the goods kept changing hands with every sleepy merchant along the road. Some even debate if the famous Spice Islands connected all these dots as the main source, or if rival routes quietly handled their own trade under the radar. By now, you realize your life and the global journey of peppercorns aren't so different. Winding, unpredictable, never quite straightforward. There's a sleepy poetry to tracing every path that humble black pebble has traveled. You're grateful for each savory pinch on your bland ship's dinner, and maybe, just maybe, you offer a silent thank you to the anonymous cooks, traders, and pickpockets who made sure the world got that familiar bite. As the stars blink out and the sea turns silver, you tuck away another tale, one of flavor, fortune, and the quiet magic hidden in your own dinner. Dawn creeps over the horizon, and you lean over the rails, gazing toward the coast where the Persian Gulf ports buzz with a kind of sleepy purpose. You can almost hear it, the low chatter drifted on the morning breeze, the distant thump of dockworkers unloading baskets, and the slap-slap of sandals in muddy alleys. Here, 1,000 languages mingle in the air, a wild patchwork of Arabic, Farsi, Swahili, Gujarati, Malay, and more. Each tongue sings of spices, bargains, and home. If you were hoping for peace and quiet, think again. These harbors, Muscat, Basra, Siraf, were the world's crossroads, legendary for nights stretching into dawn, with lamps flickering over crates of cinnamon and nutmeg. Vendors hawk date cakes and hot saffron tea, while merchants drowse in doorways beside their goods, waiting for the monsoon to shift or today's best offers to appear. And between the tents, a riot of scents clings to every step. Musk and frankincense, sandalwood and garlic, the salty sting of drying fish. Here's a mainstream fact. These ports weren't just trading posts. They were cultural melting pots, blending ideas, fashions, and foods from across the old world. You might find Roman glass beakers in the market next to Indian textiles and Chinese porcelain. It's easy to lose track of time wandering these winding streets, but watch your pouch. Pickpockets are as much a fact of life as the call to prayer ringing clear across the Dow-filled bay. Lurking amid the commotion, you catch a quirky scene. A group of dockside cats feasting on dried anchovies, wearing homemade necklaces from old camel bells. Local kids believe these cats guard against bad luck, and some sailors purposely adopt a cat mascot before setting sail. More than one old-timer claims a purring companion can outcharm any weather talisman or official blessing etched into the mast. Historians still argue about which Gulf port truly ruled the route. Was Siraf the brightest star, or did Sohar and Basra quietly outperform with more reliable markets and fewer official taxes? Even today, academics puzzle over lost harbor maps and crumbled fort stones, painting vivid theories of bustling wharves now drowned by rising tides. For now, you find yourself seated at a spice-stained wooden bench, chewing over some skewered lamb, flicking grains of sticky rice from your fingertips, and blending into the thrum of commerce, slowing just enough for a midday nap. The traffic of the world shuffles by, nodding, bartering, yawning. The ocean may rule the journey, but it's these drowsy ports that turn cargo into legend, and transform passing ships into part of a story that never quite sleeps. As the afternoon breezes quiet, you notice the crew gathering on the main deck, eyes lifted to the dimming sky. It's navigation hour, the time when sleepiness gives way to focus, as ancient mariners ready themselves to steer a path across thousands of empty miles. There's a strange hush. Charts are rolled out and oil lamps trimmed, brushes of starlight just winking alive overhead. You take your place, shoulder to shoulder with sailors from across the world, each clutching their own threadbare blanket or mug of weak tea, ready for tonight's gentle test. No GPS, no radar. Your tools are as basic as can be. An astrolabe carved with patient hands, a battered compass the captain swears will outlive anybody on board, and your own creased memory of sky maps. The ship's pilot, old as the cedar mast and twice as stubborn, jokes about steering by nose when it's cloudy. Trust him or not, it's true that some seasoned skippers claim to smell rain or land before any sighting. More often, you depend on the pattern of the waves, the angle of the wind, and most important, the bright sweep of familiar stars overhead. Here's a well-known truth. For centuries, these sleepy spice routes were stitched together by sailors who could read the night sky like a letter from home. Arab, Indian, and Malay navigators traded not just goods, but knowledge, passing compass secrets and star poems from one generation to the next. Without accurate measurements, these trips could be lethal. Veer a little off course, and you might drift for weeks before sighting land again. And a quirkier tidbit. Sometimes ships kept trained birds, pigeons or doves, to help scout land. If the crew was adrift, they'd release the birds and watch their flight. The direction the birds vanished could be a hint at where home might lie, or where land was hidden beyond the horizon. You squint at the captain's weathered grin. He claims a pet lizard once saved his voyage, changing color when land was near. Scholars still debate if these navigation skills were truly instinct or carefully taught science. Some suggest early mariners really just trusted luck and patterns in the clouds, while others insist that shipboard teaching was as sophisticated as any university's. It's possible both views are true. When you're half asleep, holding a cracked astrolabe, everything seems possible and a little blurry. The routine continues. A murmur of coordinates, a burst of laughter as someone misplaces north, and soon you're all charting a sleepy, shared course under the slow-turning sky. The ship's gentle rocking, the crew's faint breathing, and the velvet hush of starlit water guide you further onward than any maps. By now, it's easy to see that spices on this route aren't just flavor or trade. They're talismans, medicines, and straight-up magic if you ask your fellow crewmates, or the sharp-eyed merchants who clutch satchels of mystery powders in every port. You close your eyes, inhale clove-scented air, and let your mind drift through the ways these simple plants shape ancient worlds and drowsy dreams. Tonight, a younger sailor brings you a wad of cinnamon bark. He insists chewing it keeps bad spirits and evil coughs away. That might sound like bunk, but hey, you're desperate for fresh breath after weeks of pickled fish. Pepper, the world's hidden currency, gets brewed in secret teas said to warm the soul and lull the body to sleep, even though the last batch just made you sneeze so hard you nearly fell overboard. Here's the historical anchor. Ancient physicians from Alexandria, Persia, and India actually did prescribe spices for everything from indigestion to insomnia. The writings of Galen and Charaka are packed with recipes for ginger tea, clove oil rubs, and curious sleeping drafts whipped up from nutmeg and honey. But here's a quirky tangent. In some seafaring cultures, cloves and star anise were tucked into pillows and boots, believed to keep nightmares or ship ghosts at bay. You try it tonight, and if nothing else, your feet smell a lot better. Now, let's get out the scholarly spice rack. While plenty of evidence says certain plants ease nerves or settle uneasy stomachs, historians still argue if sailors truly felt real effects or just needed anything, to believe in as the sea pushed them close to madness. Did clove rubs actually soothe fevered brows, or was the comfort all in the mind, curled up tight like a nutmeg pod at dusk? Even now, nobody's completely sure if that midnight tonic worked, or if it was just the captain's excuse to hoard the last of the good stuff. One thing is clear. On every sprawling sea journey, a pinch of cinnamon and a dab of clove do more than season the stew. They stitch together hope, ritual, and a bit of old-world magic. As waves slap gently at the hull, you drift to sleep half convinced that your dreams tonight will be cinnamon-sweet and pepper-warm, floating somewhere between memory and myth. Dawn creeps in, tinged with a glow that softens the edges of daily rivalries. Not the thunderous clashes you see in adventure movies, but the quieter, sly competition of spice traders at sea. You blink sleep from your eyes, eavesdropping on murmured updates about a rival ship hugging the horizon. Maybe it's the Hormuz Queen or the Zanj Pearl, names whispered with equal parts envy and annoyance. Life aboard isn't always a friendly group hug. As a crew member, you watch your captain grouse over trade prices, grumble at the sight of suspicious sales, and, if you're lucky, trade chocolate with a competitor for the scoop on what prices are trending in Aden this week. Still, most of the action unfolds like a sleepy chess game. Pilots race to dock early at packed harbors, hoping for first pick of the market, but rivals might gently sabotage a sale or swap out your best barrel of ginger for an oddly light one. Here's your big historical fact. Rivalries weren't always violent. Instead of brutal sea battles, many competing traders preferred subtle one-upmanship, securing exclusive access to a port, copying hull designs, or quietly bribing inspectors for fresher cargo space. Historians still argue if the legendary pepper wars of the Indian Ocean were mostly bark, with only an occasional bite. One thing's certain, the drama rarely exploded. More often, it simmered long and low, like a well-seasoned stew. And for tonight's quirky tidbit, there were rumors about certain captains who mastered the art of napping wherever, whenever, no matter the stress. Their secret? A lucky spice pouch tucked under the pillow, plus a promise to settle scores not tonight, but when the prices are better. Some crews even practiced mock duels with wooden ladles and pepper mills, just to blow off steam and see who deserved bragging rights for the best sleep spot. Amid all this slow-burn rivalry, another question floats by. Were these competitive gestures proof of a thriving, adaptable trade, or just sleepy sailors making do in a world where good humor and sly winks carried more weight than drawn swords? Scholars still debate these dynamics, turning over ancient ledgers and gossip-riddled letters for clues. But as you doze off once again, swaying to the ship's gentle roll, one truth starts to crystallize. Even in a world built on fierce ambition, there's a unique peace in knowing that sometimes all-out war is much less interesting than a well-placed, weary sigh and a sleepily traded secret. Your ship finally pulls into a sleepy cove, all sails slack, and the crew's yawns stretching wider than the harbor. This is caravan camp country, a place where sea meets sand, and the next leg of the spice journey will be done on camelback under a heat-shimmered sky. You disembark on shaky legs, joining a ragtag group of traders, porters, cooks, and guards setting up for a night beneath the stars. The rhythm here is totally different from life at sea. Caravans run on a schedule of dusk and dawn. Right now, you're sprawled on a woven mat, sharing a rough supper of flatbread, herbs, and dried fruit as the evening coolness finally sets in. There's a constant, contented hum. Someone boils up a cauldron of cardamom tea, merchants trade riddles and boasts, and the camels snort every so often, unimpressed by human drama. Fires crackle, casting shadows on the low tents, and a faint trail of cinnamon smoke weaves into the air. Mainstream fact time. Overland trade was absolutely crucial for linking the seas. Caravan routes, especially the incense route or Silk Road spurs, dotted the landscape with fortress outposts and market towns. Caravanners brought far-flung peonies, jade, cotton, and, crucially, information. News from 10 towns ago is shared just as eagerly as the price of cloves this year. Tonight's quirky tidbit? Some caravan leaders swore by a nightly ritual before sleep. They'd tie a tiny pouch of fennel seeds to their belt for protection against dreams of scorpions. A belief you chuckle at until your bedroll neighbor launches into stories of men who woke up tangled in angry snake nests. Others say singing lullabies to the camels helped more nervous beasts doze off and avoid late-night stampedes. The line between superstition and security is mighty thin when the landscape crackles with invisible threats. Now, here's a scholarly tangent that drifts through the night air. Historians still argue whether these encampments were truly peaceful melting pots or zones of subtle social tension. Did travelers from India, Africa, Persia, and beyond really bond over games and gossip? Or was each group keeping secrets and distance, quietly jockeying for advantage even when half asleep beside the same fire? For you, sleep feels different here. Sometimes uneasy, sometimes blissfully deep, always scented with spice-sweet dreams and distant camel song. You roll over, hug your pack of cloves tight, and hunt for that perfect, soft spot on the ground. Not too close to the noisy cook fire, but near enough to catch the last embers of funny tales and the gentle rise of sleepy breathing, stretched together beneath an impossibly big, star-hung sky. As dawn creeps in, the caravan camp stirs with that blend of anticipation and fatigue. Time to sample the foods and drinks that have calmed the nerves of travelers for centuries. Last night's stories still linger in your head as you rub sleep from your eyes and follow your nose toward the simmering pots in the communal kitchen. The promise of breakfast, however simple, seems like a luxury after weeks of stale ship rations and hard tack. Local cooks slice dried apricots into bowls of warm, spiced porridge, sprinkling the top with a dusting of crushed nuts and a few stray grains of sugar, saved for special occasions. You can't help but smile as a young helper pours out cardamom tea. The steam carries a whisper of home, even on the other side of the world. The flavor is earthy, slightly sweet, and somehow more comforting than any lavish feast. Someone brandishes a battered kettle filled with a brew of ginger and honey, a recipe said to settle seasick stomachs and restless minds. Although that claim is still under debate, both among medical historians and skeptics with strong stomachs. There's one quirky practice you observe. Before the caravan begins, travelers line up for a sip of salted yogurt drink. Tangy, bracing, a bit odd to the untrained tongue, but legendary for keeping fatigue at bay during desert crossings. Some old-timers claim that chewing on a sprig of fresh mint tucked behind the ear helps prevent both thirst and drowsiness. You try it mostly for fun, and the aroma gives a mild lift, even if you're not convinced of its superpowers. Mainstream fact: many staple foods along the historical spice routes, like flatbreads baked over open flames, lentil stews, or honeyed cakes, were designed for portability and long shelf life. The recipes you taste this morning have changed little in 1,000 years, still built around what could be traded, carried, or scavenged from the arid borderlands. As you savor your breakfast, you overhear fellow travelers swapping family tricks for a good night's rest. Anise seeds soaked in hot water, almond paste for energy, and rosewater drizzled on pancakes to invite sweet dreams. These gentle rituals aren't just tradition, they're a survival mechanism and a communal bond. You realize that food and drink aren't merely fuel here. They're comfort, medicine, and social glue. Historians still argue whether these simple recipes truly offered medicinal benefits beyond sheer hydration, or if, under harsh conditions, any warm meal felt miraculous. When you're huddled with strangers over shared food, every bite is another thread connecting you to the sprawling world of spice and trade. Soon enough, the camp grows quiet again as travelers gather their gear, refreshed and ready to face the next leg of the journey. You take one last sip of cardamom tea, pocket a chunk of nut-studded bread, and breathe in the sense of breakfast fading into the desert wind. Assured you'll remember this kind of comfort far longer than all the landmarks and deals along the way. You find yourself wandering into the shadow of forgotten cities. Once bustling spice trade hubs now faded or swallowed by time's creeping sands. The caravan's path changes, the excitement growing as word of a distant bazaar filters through the travelers. Maybe it's the legendary port of Deeble lost to silt and storm, or the mysterious city of Ubar, once rumored to sparkle in the desert sun before vanishing beneath the dunes. Each site stirs dreams and half-memories. Stories of markets so packed that the scent of cardamom hung in the air for miles, and silks glittered in every doorway. Exploring forgotten cities sparks a strange awe. You wander through crumbling gateways where moss and salt have reclaimed things built for empires. Every footstep kicks up dust probably scented by cloves 1,000 years ago. Local shepherd boys offer rumors about treasure buried under collapsed arches. Though in truth, the treasure lies in the city's stories, the rumors, and the half-broken paving stones still stained with saffron or pepper. Mainstream fact: many spice cities, like Rapta on the Swahili coast, Maziris on India's Malabar shore, or the Omani city of Kalhit, were not only trading hubs, but cultural and intellectual crossroads. Travelers swapped recipes and poetry, legal codes and lullabies, alongside their sacks of nutmeg. A city's rhythm was measured in market shouts, the music of camel bells, the lazy clang of harbor blacksmiths, and the near-constant chatter of sleepy traders waiting out the noon heat. If you look closely, quirky details surface. Some of these towns had sleeping inns exclusively for spice porters. Cheap, dark, and stuffy, but decorated with painted stars and crescent moons. The walls sometimes featured graffiti praising the best cinnamon or mocking rival merchants caught napping on the job. Forgotten wells and communal gardens might still be traced beneath wild sage and pomegranate trees, holding onto a sweetness no storm could wash away. Here's the debate. Do these cities crumble because the spice trade moved on, or did new sea routes, pirate raids, and shifting sands simply tip history in another direction? Scholars bicker over trade records, archaeological teapots, and ruined mosque domes, seeking the truth in whispers and fragments. At dusk, as you settle on a half-toppled city wall, the view is pure poetry. Coins made smooth by centuries, wind-blown petals caught in broken columns, your caravan's fires just blinking awake. Every forgotten city is a gentle reminder. Even the busiest crossroads will, one day, become a story told in whispers beside the spice barrel, softened by sleep, and retold beneath the wide, remembering sky. The early morning finds you a few miles out from another faded landmark, thoughts drifting to how the paths you've traveled, the seas, the harbors, the caravan camps, still shape lives today. Even as the ancient spice routes have faded from maps, their legacy clings to kitchens, language, and culture across the continents. You walk through a modern marketplace, maybe it's Istanbul, Mumbai, or New Orleans, watching merchants pile pepper, cardamom, and cinnamon high, each scoop echoing those long, sleepy journeys that once circled the world. It strikes you. The most familiar foods in your diet, fragrant rice, apple pie, even a humble bowl of pho, are flavored with reminders of trade routes that stitched Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas together over centuries. The way you crave pumpkin spice, or a steaming masala chai, has its roots in the same negotiations, sleepy rivalries, and sweet deals you've witnessed on these long-forgotten decks and trails. Even the slang you drop at diners, like calling someone worth their salt, whispers of distant, salt-crusted shorelines and the bartering that kept those ancient ships afloat. Here's the big historical anchor. Spice was never just trade, it was transformation. Empires rose and fell to its tune. Scientists mapped winds and stars because their kings demanded nutmeg. Towns grew from dusty caravans into great world cities because black pepper demanded an audience. Some spices shaped whole economies, and others soothed tired children and adults into gentle sleep. Still, quirky reminders crop up in places you'd never expect. Every holiday cookie recipe handed down through American kitchens, or that old bottle of cloves in the back of your grandma's cabinet, carries echoes of the spice ships and sleepy harbor buzz. In rural South India, you might still spot peppercorns drying in the sun. On the streets of Zanzibar, a vendor fans nutmeg's perfume into the breeze, quick to explain how a pinch turns even the dullest meal magical. Historians still debate whether it was really flavor or sheer fascination with the exotic that kept people clamoring for new spices, but there's no denying their reach. Tonight, the story is everywhere. In the warmth of gingerbread, the sparkle of cinnamon sugar, the steady comfort of a spiced tea before bed. You tilt your face to the wind, sensing the memory of long-ago ships that bore these treasures. A legacy, really, of dreaming traders and sleepy seafarers steering by starlight, bringing the world closer with every mile. You're perched on the deck as twilight stretches, the sleepy seafarers' long voyage home finally within sight. The faces around you are softer now, sunburn peeled, tempers faded, everyone dreaming of cool water and real beds. The ship creaks less, as if content she's completed her part in history's tapestry, and the air flutters with spices and silent anticipation. Tonight, the only storm is in your memory. Weeks of salt and sweat pressed into your skin, stories traded under shifting stars, all leading to this gentle descent into rest. Sails snap and billow overhead as the coastline shimmers, blurry in dusk's fading gold. The sailors trade hopeful glances. Someone hums a familiar tune, part lullaby, part homesick ballad, always just off-key enough to raise a smile. Each slow mile now is a triumph of patience rather than speed. Nobody's racing to be first. Everyone's just inching closer to a dawn-promising landfall, and with it, the sweet comfort of stillness. You notice the ship's cat curled by the tiller, twitching in a dream. Maybe chasing dock mice, maybe just remembering scraps of fish filched from the cook's bowl. The cook, muttering about running low on pepper, still finds a way to spice a simple stew. As you dip your cup into the pot, you wonder, will anything ever taste this precious again? It's easy to forget how starvation, loneliness, and boredom can transform the smallest pleasures, like the chewy sweetness of dried apricots or the faint spice fog drifting over damp wood, into memories that last a lifetime. Mainstream historians love to point out that the return from these ancient voyages wasn't just a journey, it was a transformation. A sailor returned with new languages on the tongue, stories for grandchildren, or trinkets nobody at home could even name. According to the more romantic accounts, some brought back peculiar habits, like always sleeping under the stars, even when a roof and mattress beckoned. Your own quirks now seem unremarkable beside the knowledge that a sleepy world waited patiently for change, one cargo hold at a time. But here's the quirky edge of it. Some ports welcomed spice ships with processions of lanterns and musicians riffing on tunes borrowed from half a dozen far-off harbors. Others barely noticed, the crew slipping off to the nearest laundry or bathhouse, melting into a town they could barely recognize after months away. Historians still argue whether these homecomings changed the shape of towns, or if towns quietly shaped the stories told by returning wanderers. A gentle reminder that the truth is probably a little of both. As the anchor drags and the sails fall limp, your body yields to exhaustion. It's a slow, sleepy surrender, more delicious than the first bite of spiced bread after a storm. The long voyage lulls into soft shadows and deeper breaths, welcoming everyone back, tracing all those distant roads right up to your own peaceful doorstep. Wind down, 300 words. As your eyes grow heavy and the imagined lanterns of the homecoming fade, you let yourself sink deeper into the gentle hush left by the spice route's end. The waves recede into a slow, soothing rhythm, a steady heartbeat, both ancient and yours. Around you, the soft shuffle of bare feet on deck, the last sleepy exchange of a half-finished joke, the scent of cardamom weaving its quiet spell, all fade into silence, leaving only the certainty that you've come through a long journey in good company. You pull your blanket closer, feeling the weight of starlit miles and cozy dusk settle on your shoulders. Every sound becomes softer, each detail blurred at the edges, the day's frantic pace long gone. The spice trade's legacy shimmers just out of reach. A story whispered in a language you almost remember, tastes clinging below the surface of memory. You breathe in, and the world narrows to nothing but warmth and presence, here now at rest. Let your ship drift farther from the noise and worry, into waters calm and deep. Clouds press low, shadows stretch and yawn, and the sails, loosened for the night, hang over you like gentle, faded hands. The tales of rivalries and trades, of lost cities and silent meals by firelight, slip quietly away, just fragments in the hush. Trust that somewhere a cat purrs on the dock, a lantern glows in a distant inn, and the spices you've carried, real or imagined, promise gentle dreams and the slow, steady comfort of sleep. The journey home is a circle, always completed by coming back to yourself. Good night, traveler. Drift easy, and let the sleepy seafarers of the ancient world keep watch until morning.